Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's The Danny Buckler Show, coming to you live on the Danny Buckler Network. It's a network now. It's not just this. It's here. It's Twitch TV. I'm all over the place, mate. It's a full network, not just a channel, with multiple shows. I'll tell you about that later. Come on in, gang. All are welcome. Welcome, Megan. Nice to see you. Nice to see you, Kapow, sorry. And, yeah, everyone's Katie Skipton. Oh, Katie Skipton's here as well. That's good news. I've got ever such a lovely guest for you tonight. I really have. We've had, if you're a regular on this show, we have had comedians and we've had magicians, as in conjurers. We've had all sorts of people. But tonight we've got someone very special. We've got a genuine bona fide psychedelic shaman, a trickster, a wonder of a man. I can't wait for you to meet him. And I can't wait to see him in the thing so I can let him in. He's the author of many books. A book that I wanted to show you actually, but I can't because it's one of the books that there are certain books that I give away, and one of the books I give away is one of his. So I bought about 4 copies of it, but I always end up giving it away, and I gave the last one away a couple of weeks ago, so I haven't got it. But there we are. Just while we're waiting, how is everybody? Is everyone all right? Hey, Jake, how are you? Jake's going to do one of these. Oh, he's here. Friends, very excited about this chat. It's going to be a bit different than normal, I hope. But it's going to be wonderful. I'm going to open up a portal now and bring into view one of the wisest people that I know. Here we go. Oh, reaching through it into North Devon, I believe. And I'm going to come back with the wonderful Mr. Julian Vayne.
Oh, gosh, I'm here.
Boom!
Whoa, let me shed a lot more light on the proceedings. Hang on. Oh, where are we? Let's just make it less Stygian darkness. There we go. Is that better? I think so.
That's much I can see. Oh, I'm loving the place as well.
What? Oh, yes. You're in my front room, and you appear to be in some sort of psychedelic wonderland.
I'm in
Remarkable.
front of a psychedelic wonder sheet.
Excellent. Lovely to see you, my friend.
And you too, man. How are you?
Yeah. I'm good. I've had a lovely day featuring things like going walking by the seaside with my eldest son, exploring the coastline, finding caves, and then he cooked me dinner. Like, the world is looking fantastic. There he is, amazing, fabulous human being, and also my backup kidneys. So it's all good. Yeah.
That's how I think of my niece and nephew at the moment. Yeah. And
You can never have too much extra bone marrow, just sort of, waiting in the wings if necessary.
It's a place to store your DNA. I saw the video of it. It's gorgeous where you are down there. It's on the coast, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so up in an area called, it's a little village called Lee. So it's Lee Bay, so North Devon coast, looking all kind of rugged and exciting today. It was very good. And we arrived just at exactly the right time. So had we arrived a few hours sort of earlier, we would have found the sea right up next to the village. But as it was kind of departing. And so all these little coves were being explored. And so we had a great time just, traveling through a landscape that was unknown to the both of us, or at least that little detail of it. So, yeah, it was great. It was great. What about you? What have you been up to?
That sounds like an incredible part of the world to be a magus. I'm in Guildford.
What excitement is to be had there today? I mean, what kind of crazy, wild, madcap stuff's been happening in Guildford?
Well, we're heading into Tier 3, which is lovely.
Nice.
But it's quite nice. So we haven't got we've got no rugged coastline. We do have what's left of a castle. It's technically the keep, but it's now like this kind of tower that I go and sort of walk around on my sort of let's get some air and pretend this isn't happening walks. And I create my own reality, and then but that's pretty much it. We've got a Starbucks, but it's nice enough, and it's not North Devon. Oh, I'd love to live in North Devon. I feel myself drawn to the countryside, Julian.
Well, I think lots of people in urban spaces at the moment find themselves drawn to the countryside. I mean, it was very quiet where we were. It was amazing. I mean, it was one of these beaches which was like it had no litter on it at all, like nothing.
Oh wow!
I mean, it was just like this is astonishing. This is fantastic. Posh cars parked out in front of some of the drives. But pretty quiet, really. I would imagine, though, that there'll be a great exodus from the city now. Everyone's realised that they can sit around and still do their job, at least with, a shirt on the top and their gym jams on the bottom.
Mm.
So, I mean, for many people, I suspect that the great exodus from the cities will continue, even though, God's willing, the pandemic might be what was it? What was it? Our great leader said, "This is the beginning of the end, or the end of the beginning, or something." Anyway, whatever. Yeah.
I'm literally I'm living 1 second at a time, mate. That's what I'm 1 second at a time. All that's happening is what's happening now.
Absolutely. Well, yeah. I mean, that is the way it is. That is the way it is.
Yay. So I thought we'd chat about all sorts tonight. You mentioned when I asked you to do this, and you suggested this date. There was a reason. You used a word that didn't recognise about what the date was.
What is it? The 17th, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's as I understand it, it would have been the Roman celebration of Saturnalia.
That was
So
the word you used.
Yeah. So Saturnalia is it was a Roman festival which they had. I think the 17th of December, I think, might have been the start of it. But at various points in the Roman Empire, they went through phases of like, oh, it's 2 days long, or it's 3 days long, it's 5 days long, and then there was like, oh, we've got to rein this in, because what you had it was a classic kind of misrule kind of celebration, so that you'd have all the slaves would have like time off, and they would get to be the masters under certain circumstances, a bit like some sort of BDSM but role reversal festival. So you'd have bit of cross dressing. So that whole thing where rugby players dress up as women, that's by no means a new innovation. So Saturnalia was part of that. And as is traditional at this time of year, you just like eat loads of food, drink loads of booze, hope eventually that the sun was going to come back. Then you'd have the festival of Sol Invictus around the solstice time, and then you have like about 3 days between the solstice day and Christmas. So Christmas marks the point at which there's like an extra 30 seconds or a minute's worth of daylight, and everyone breathes a sigh of relief and says, oh, thank goodness, it looks like whatever ceremony we did must have worked. At least the early indications are good. So yeah, Saturnalia is what it is today. A day of misrule and reversal of the normal social order, and fun and jollity in the face of the winter. Here we are.
We picked the right day for this chat, then.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely.
Happy Saturnalia.
Happy Saturnalia to you and to everybody else who's here. I can see the various people sort of, appearing. Little love hearts floating up. That's very good.
So one of the things, because you're one of those people that that fascinate me the most, the people that find a way to be a full-time them. You know what I mean? Because it's
I've got a day job. I've got a day job, mate. I mean, I've got a day job. Yes, I'm a full-time me. All the time, every time. I wake up in the morning. Oh, it's still me. So far so good for the last 52 years or thereabouts. So I have a day job. My day job is that I work in museums and galleries and sort of heritage settings, cultural settings, and basically I'm the dude who works like kind of strategies to this is in the boring language of the sector. So to engage people with the objects held in museum and gallery collections. And what that boils down to is that if you remember that time when you were a kid and you got on the bus and it was like, oh, we're going to the museum,
Yep.
Brilliant. And it's like it's a day out, we can eat crisps and maybe we can sneak off and smoke cigarettes or whatever we're up to. But basically we're going on a jolly. It's fantastic. So what then happens is your teacher deposits you in some mildly forbidding building full of a bunch of boxes with things that mean nothing to you about your life, glass cases full of old stuff, and you've got various options at that point. You can you can have the kids just like mill around, rather like sort of goldfish, in the sort of the bowl of this gallery space, just moving slowly from pointless object to pointless object and gazing mournfully at them and wondering whether it's time for a break.
Yeah.
Or what you can do is you can do the kind of stuff that I do. So I would say to the kids, let's imagine this is a group of they're in big school, they're like year 7, something like this. and you say to them, you're going to go into the gallery. You have to enter this place as a ninja thief. Your Shogun overlord has commissioned you to go into this gallery and to steal something from this gallery for their collection, their private collection. Be stealthy, be quiet, be silent. Watch out for the security. Stay low. Go around and case the joint and then figure out which thing you're going to steal and come back and tell me what it is and why. So immediately you change without any kit, without anything beyond just like placing a little kind of intention in someone's brain to meet the experience in a certain kind of a way. And it's great for the rest of the public as well, because from their point of view, these kids are being quiet. These kids are being slightly odd because they're kind of, they're doing their ninja thing, and that's all cool. But it also means that they get an opportunity to like look at the stuff, and then they'll say, one of them will say, I'm going to steal that because it's a weapon and I can fight my way out. This is like a small thing I can carry. It's going to be worth loads of money. This thing is very rare, whatever. And so what I do is I kind of try and change people's perception, which is what I do in lots of the work that I do. Try and change people's perception in terms of what they're experiencing so they can see it in a different way. And maybe they can get something out of that they wouldn't have got if the teacher had just gone, oh, go and look at that gallery of old stuff. And then you've got 15 minutes, and then we'll go and look at another gallery of old stuff. And then you can have a break.
You're the teacher I wish I had.
Oh. Well, I aspire to be the teacher that I wish I had. I mean, I did have a couple of good ones, I have to say. It's like that, isn't it? You think back to your school days, and there's a few of them that stand out as being like these sort of slightly wacky, slightly entertaining. They hadn't been ground down into the terror of just all the paperwork. So yeah. And my role in that kind of setting is I mean, I do kind of loads of different stuff, but as an example, it's like cooking up like little strategies like that, and then training people how to use them, developing projects where we do stuff like this, to kind of explore things in, interesting and entertaining in different ways. So that's the day job. And then, the evening is spent, summoning weird spirits, going into altered states of consciousness, drinking tea, the usual, really, when there's nothing on the telly.
Boring. Back to the museum.
Yeah. Back to that.
That's what I love about that, because that even in the day job, you're still a magician. You're still altering perception and.
Yeah. So there's that point, isn't there, in one's life, I suppose. I imagine you've already done it, where you create a website that's actually just like your name, Danny Buckler. There's my website. This is me. This is all the stuff I do. So I was putting together a big list of all the books that I've done, and all the books that I've kind of got like essays in and blah blah blah. And then there's one sort of thing that looks to the untrained eye like a bit of an outlier. So there's a book that I did a few years back called Wonderful Things, Learning with Museum Objects. And it doesn't look like a book about magic at all, a book about like the occult, the mysterious, the weird. But it's actually just exactly about that, because it's about strategies like the one I just mentioned, which are about evoking curiosity in people and getting people to see things in different ways. And so it's a book that's like, aimed at like educators and teachers and, various other people. So that's in the list. And then everything else is just like weird psychedelics, magic, weirdness. And then there's that. But it's the same thing. It just has a different language set around it, so that it's about appealing to a different audience. Like a lot of my work is about like, who's the audience? Like, who are we working with? Teenagers? We're working with older people? We're working with like, I don't know, refugees? Like who are we trying to chat to here? So it's about kind of finding the right language, the right sort of register. And a lot of the stuff that I do, part of my passion, I suppose it is really, is to try and find the languages that work for people, where they can kind of understand, what's going on, and they can develop those things for themselves. They can develop their own curiosity, they can find their own discoveries. So rather than kind of like, again, in a museum, you can say to somebody, this is a 15th century blah blah that was made by Major James Mrs. Farquhar retired, and it was gifted to, like, who cares? But if you say to someone, okay, so here's a bunch of objects, which is your favorite? Once somebody has picked their favorite one, they're invested in it, and you can then say, oh, it's interesting you picked that one because, and you can then pull out the story. So I mean, I'll give you an example of that. I did some work a few years back It was a hilarious project. So there was a thing. Do you remember there was a thing called the Olympics that happened many years ago when
Oh,
people
back in the
would
happy
gather?
times.
Yes, in the happy time. Um, and there was a thing called the Cultural Olympiad, which
Right.
was like the Arts Council basically had a big load of money and various other organisations. And I was one of the people commissioned to do some work around the theme that had been chosen by a group of young people for the Southwest. And the theme that they'd chosen was sex. And of course, immediately all the adults were like, "Whoa, what are we going to do with this? What, you know?"
Yeah.
And so there was a whole bunch of like really, really fascinating and entertaining conversations. One of the things that we did was we worked with people between the ages of 14 and 25, and we worked with museum collections, with objects from museum collections, particularly a collection that was it's owned by Wellcome, so the Wellcome Foundation, who do basically a big drug company, and they have a thing called the Special Collection. The Special Collection are things like beautiful paper Japanese talismans to make your brothel successful, or examples of. There was one I remember, a fabulous sort of, I think, sort of 18-inch long marble penis, which was from Pompeii, because in Pompeii, as in common with lots of kind of the back to the Romans, you would have a big penis outside the front of your shop. Not if it was a knocking shop or anything like this, just because it was lucky to have a big penis. Oh, big penis outside that baker's. Do you remember that? Oh, let's go and have a drink over here because they've got a particularly good penis outside the front of their shop. That's just what you had. So we had all these interesting objects to bring up these conversations and to have them in interesting and safe ways. Because when you're talking about an object, like if you and I talk about the cup,
Yeah.
whether we like it or whether we dislike it or whatever, we're actually, of course, talking about our own stuff. But it's safe because we're talking about this object. So we work with various objects, and one of the objects we worked with was chastity belts, right? So medieval chastity belts. Everyone's heard of a medieval chastity belt. In medieval times, they used to lock people up, and you'd go away on your crusade, and then you'd come back, and you'd hope that your beloved chatteled wife was still pure. Now, of course, if you actually think this through, you would die within not very long of having a chastity belt on. And there are, in fact, no medieval records about chastity belts at all. So medieval chastity belts only exist in the minds of male 19th century collectors. And so people, of course, went, oh, this bloke with a load of money, this Mr. Wellcome wants to collect chastity belts. Oh, I'm sure we've got one around here somewhere. And you'd find one, you'd make it out of old metal and so on. But the point was that you would take these objects, show the kids these objects, and they'd be really interesting conversations about like sex and power and who has control and all that kind of stuff. And then you'd give them the killer thing, which is to say, and guess what? These are all fakes. These are all 18th, 19th century inventions, and they tell you much more about like the male psyche of those ages and the collectors and so on than they do anything about. So again, it's about like, you bring the object, you get a person interested and invested in it, they have the thing, and then you can provide the information because that's part of what you're up to. But it's like you have to give the person the present. They have to unwrap it, they have to do the discovery. And it's at that point you can kind of maybe add some extra stuff into the mix. So there you go. That's the day job.
This is incredible. I'm loving this chat. Some of the people that not everyone, but a few are like theatrical conjurers. I hope they're paying attention to this because you're throwing down gems. This is wonderful. I've got some things I wanted to ask you purely for my own sort of selfish interest, but because my first encounter with you, I mean, I've known you for a couple of years now. I think maybe longer. In fact, 3 or 4. In fact,
yeah.
Getting on 4, but my first encounter with you was back in the day when I was a young chaos mage in London, and I found a copy of I Can't Believe This Isn't Chaos, the first book, the one.
Now that's what I call chaos magic.
That's what I call chaos magic. I have it still here. It was in like one of those cool Notting Hill bookshops for £3 where everyone trades their stuff. And it was like, whoa, I found a guy here. Like, got well into it. Because you were around at the sort of beginning of that current, were you not? Or pretty close to.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny because I kind of, I suppose I knew about chaos magic and the group that Pete Carroll and co had founded, the Illuminates of Thanateros, and I knew about all this kind of stuff. but I was like a goth kid, and it was kind of too obvious, right? It was too sort of, like I kind of knew that this was happening. I wasn't quite connected with it directly, but I had like Phil Hine, who was one of the people from that kind of set. He was a member of the coven
Mm.
that I ran like a long time ago now. This is like, yeah, 30 years ago, I guess. Um, so I was kind of like knocking around these people, and I knew like Pete Carroll just as a mate. We used to go, like when I lived in Bristol, we used to go drinking
Right.
in the local boozer, and I guess it was about maybe 20 odd years ago that I started kind of really sort of thinking, actually, this is the domain, this is the crew that I'm really interested in, because I was interested in that idea of here's magic, here's this kind of all this the Western exploration of magic and mysticism and blah. But of course, chaos magic provided that nice kind of Discordian element, that punk element,
Mm.
that element which was about like, well, try this out, rather than just like reading loads of stuff. This idea of really that although you had different kind of cultural envelopes within which magic happened, whether you're talking about it being something from the grimoire tradition, or the shamanism of Mongolia, or similar things of North or South America or whatever, or um, different sort of styles, but nevertheless underneath these differences there was similarities. There were great similarities in terms of like technique. And so I'm always really interested in asking, like, well, what is it we should do? What is the technique? What's the process here? Like you can have all kinds of like metaphysical ideas and philosophies, and the special name that you give to the thing, and the special direction that you have to face, and blah blah blah.
Mm.
But it's like, well, yeah, but what do we do? And a lot of the techniques are techniques of the body, so they're kind of working with the body to induce different states of awareness, different states of consciousness. Um, and so, yeah, I kind of got involved explicitly within chaos magic with about 20 odd years ago. But even before that, I was involved more in sort of Wicca and kind of the pagan, neo-pagan movement. And the groups that I was in, we were still quite kind of chaos orientated, in the sense that we would like all the rituals that we did, we would make up, we would create them. It
Mm.
was a creative process, rather than, oh, it's we have to open this page of the book, and now we're at Saturnalia, we must do it like this, rah rah rah
Yeah.
rah. There's nothing wrong with like uh having process and having repetition and all those kinds of things. But fundamentally, the magical tradition is about, cultivating the flame, not worshipping the ashes. So that idea of
Mm.
like the creative impulse was something that really spoke to me about the whole kind of chaos thing. So yeah, yeah.
Wow. Where were you living at that? Did you move to London, or did you?
So where was I? I was in Bristol for donkey's years, and then I was, when I wrote Now That's What I Call Chaos Magic, I was down in Brighton. So I spent about 3-4 years or something like this in Brighton before moving to North Devon.
Mm.
And it was kind of during that time that I got very directly involved with the sort of chaos magicians as a community, as a
Mm.
scene. Um, yeah, before that it was very much the kind of Wicca, paganism. You can never have too much velvet, and all that kind of thing going on,
Oh
which
yeah,
which
tell me
is
about
great.
that.
Very good, very good. Standing in rainy fields, shouting at things that probably aren't there. Amazing. Those are all quite jolly. But and it's interesting actually, because having gone, into the chaos thing, like a lot of my practice now, a lot of the stuff that I do looks more like, and it's a problematic word to use, because it's all kinds of stuff about, cultural appropriation and
Yeah.
the way academia works, but a kind of shamanic style of working, I guess, something like this. That's really where a lot of my interest lies these days. So when I talk to people about ritual, and they say, well, how should I do this? How should I, what should I say? How should I do it? And I say, well, yeah, really, for me, it's about finding stuff that's kind of that's just authentic, that comes from the heart. If you're doing a ceremony, and you are, I don't know, let's imagine something quite sort of traditional. So you're making acknowledging the four directions and the four elements that are traditionally associated with those things. yes, of course, there are formalized words that you can say. Spirits of the watchtower of the east, spirits of the air, I do summon, stir, and call thee up to guard the circle and witness this rite. Wherefore do I bless and consecrate? All that sort of stuff. Fantastic, marvelous. But you can just say something that really means that's authentic in the moment, and that's what to aim for. The words and the scripts are a means to getting to that place, I think. So yeah, so a lot of my practice now is quite, shamanic, for want of better terms. And I say for want of better terms, partly because I grew up in the 70s, essentially 70s, 80s. And so one of the things that I encountered was, do you remember all those glorious coffee table books of the occult, sort of
Yes, I do. Yeah.
slightly dodgy black and white photographs of Alex and Maxine with Delphinius clothing and and mysterious looking objects and things. And I kind of looked through these books, and all the shamans seem to be they seem to have very often different skin color from me. So I sort of assumed that shamanism was this thing that was all like the exotic, and it was part of that kind of thing. And I suppose that as I've got older, I've realized that to some extent, this is it's more like a style of magic which is kind of inherent within everybody, and it's it's something we can rediscover, we can reimagine. And one of the things I'm interested in is kind of reimagining that kind of shamanism in the context in which I live, and the time that I live, and the communities that I'm part of, and the kind of cultural group that I'm part of.
And your ability to do that is exceptional. I remember when we were hanging out in Glasgow one time, and I asked you about, I was wrestling with the concept of the holy guardian angel, because everyone I've spoken to Lon about it, and a couple of other people, they'd all give me these weird sort of looks, and it's never what you think it is, and it's over there, and is it here? Is it you? Is it? It was like, could you just give me some coherency here? And I asked you about it, and you literally just went, right, blah, 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 blah. And at the end of the chat, I had total clarity. It was like you took all of that out of it. Literally, there was no secret merchant here. Here it is. And it was like, well, you've just changed everything. Thank you, Julian Vayne. You've got that wonderful ability to communicate these ideas with such simplicity.
I think also, like, for me, this is all a work in progress. Like, I don't know. I'm just like a white working class dude from Stevenage who's read too many books on magic. I mean, do you know what I mean? That's like the story. So, I'm still figuring stuff out. So I try as far as I can to kind of bracket these things by saying, well, as far as I understand it, or it seems to me, or in my experience, or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of the kind of, and this is where the chaos magic style I thought was really interesting, because it kind of cuts through the complexity. It says, like, okay, so there's all these different, and let's say you're going to do a ritual and you think, oh, should it be on this phase of the moon? Should it be on this day? Should it be on this planetary hour? Should I do it according to some, and it's more about saying, well, what you're aiming to do is you're aiming to find a place that, or a time to do your ritual, which is powerful. So the time to do the ritual that's powerful may be in part constructed from kind of cultural signifiers, Halloween, generally accepted festival for many people in lots of different domains, therefore it becomes a powerful time. But also, an anniversary of particular note for you as an individual, or a time of the day, or a day of the week, or whatever. So it's like the underlying process is find a time that carries the power with it and the meanings and associations with it that you want. That's the time to use. That's the time to use. And all the books and all of the kind of the construction that kind of sits around that is just, I think, a way of really specifying that what we're aiming to do is we're aiming to use this kind of combination of logical, rational intelligence and awareness, and like emotional feeling, and bringing those together so that we get the ritual happening at the time that is right for that ritual. Yeah. So another example of that would be when people talk about, lots of people encounter magic and they encounter the sigilization. There is a sigil. All you have to do is make a little monogram and like concentrate terribly hard over it and, blow on it 3 times and then your wish comes true. And a lot of people kind of, they kind of get into this idea of Austin Osman Spare's sigil. So you write your desire, you turn it into like an abstract form. You go through some magic process, and then you very often you get rid of the sigil. You let it go in some sense. And you say to people, okay, so how would you let the sigil go? And you say, well, if it was a sigil for getting a new house, for example, it's common for lots of practitioners to perhaps set the sigil on fire. Does it seem poetically right that in order to get a new house, you perhaps represent the new house and then you set it on fire? I'm not sure that's right. So maybe you could do something else. Maybe you could seal it in an envelope and post it to the address that you want to live at. Or maybe you could post it back to yourself, or maybe you could bury it in the ground so that it's slowly absorbed by the ground. Or if it's some other kind of, so you find the mechanism that is, a lot of it's like a poetry or like any sort of art. It's like finding what's the right way to do this, what's the authentic way to do this, what's the way that feels nice, that feels like you kind of go back from it and go, oh yeah, okay, I can see why it's like this. So if I want to take the sigil and I want it to be something that's about, I don't know, a transformation process, perhaps I get that sigil and maybe I write it on something or put it on a stone and then I throw it into the river, or I throw it on something, a leaf that will float downstream. Maybe it's a sigil which is to do with some other process, so I'll draw it on me and then I'll dance until I've just sweated the sigil off, So so rather than saying, oh, sigils are a thing where you look at it, you set it on fire after you've looked at it, and then you whatever. It's like, no, the practice of the magic is to do a certain thing, and doing that certain thing, it requires you to think through the quality of the intention, the quality of and the style with which you present the thing. That's what I find particularly interesting. Trying to find the right way of doing things, I guess.
Beautiful. If I look down, by the way, I'm not ignoring you. I've got a questions box open
Oh, good.
for people. That's all. It just buzzed, but it wasn't one coming through. But that's what I'm doing when I look away. This is incredible, Julian. Thank you for this.
Oh,
I'm loving it.
You're very welcome. Very welcome. It's very good.
So, I was going to ask you another thing as well about the banned Oxford book.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to ask you about that?
Yeah, of course you can. Of course you can. You can ask anything you like. Okay, so for people who are listening to the live stream, so watching the live stream, who've not heard the story. So, in essence, what happened was that. I'll give you a little bit of the backstory here. So I went to an event last year that the Oxford Psychedelic Society organised. So the Oxford Psychedelic Society, as the name suggests, is a psychedelic society in Oxford. It's predominantly students from the university, but not exclusively. And they had this amazing event called the Oddball, which was delightful. I mean, the Sun Ra Orchestra played there, so it was completely bonkers. And there were some amazing things. Beautiful day. So I did a talk. There was a whole bunch of other kind of, folks talking about various things, psychedelics and so on. And I said we had a brilliant party at the end of it. It was delightful. Remember parties? They were a thing as well.
Oh, they were. That was a time.
In the before time.
The 90s.
So anyway, we did this thing and it was great. And I said to the dude, okay, well, I'd love to do something else. It'd be great. We started an email conversation. And so I said, well, I'll come to Oxford and I'll do like a lecture and then like a workshopy thing, give people a bit of some bang for their buck. And so he tried to organise it, and it was rather strange because every time he tried to book a room, it was like, oh no, there's not a room available. Oh, you can't do that. No, it's not. And eventually, he managed to get some sense from one of the administrators at a college which shall remain nameless in Oxford University. Yes. Anyway, and the administrator said, well, I've done some research on this person who you're going to book, and I'm concerned about their on-the-record comments about illegal drug use, and because of our duty of care to our students, we can't allow them to speak at the university venue. So this was hilarious for many, 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 many reasons. One reason it was hilarious for me was that I knew that in 1930, Aleister Crowley, peace be upon him, was also banned from Oxford University. He was invited by the Poetry Society to do a talk, and he wasn't able to do his talk, and they banned him. So firstly, there was a kind of resonance there that was quite amusing. Secondly, it's really interesting because yeah, I've used a number of psychedelics, and of course, interestingly, there are plenty of places on the planet where many psychedelic substances, it's perfectly legitimate and fine to take them. You know, you can go to Amsterdam and eat truffles and smoke toad venom to your heart's content, and it's a bit of a grey area with the law. But there are, of course, an increasing number of places where it's, you know, these things are changing. And I'm relatively careful about what I say about where I do things. And the only time I think I've been really explicit about where I've taken a psychedelic was when I was in a licensed, legal, legit scientific trial taking psilocybin in a hospital in London in 2019. It's also, of course, amusing because there are no such things as illegal drugs. There are drugs which are controlled substances which you can be licensed or not licensed to handle. So there are plenty of people who are licensed to handle LSD in the same way that there are plenty of people who are licensed to handle things like anthrax or heavy weapons or any number of different things. It's about licensing. The drugs themselves are not and have never been illegal. It's an interesting kind of linguistic kind of confusion. And in addition, the real kind of like the real icing on the cake for me was the fact that what I was going to talk to the students about was how to change your consciousness without using drugs. So I was going to talk to them about breath work and drumming and, you know, chanting and various other techniques which do the same stuff by and large as psychedelic drugs do, but without taking psychedelic drugs. And given the fact that in, I think it was 2018, the National Union of Students did a survey and found that 39% of students who would admit to it were using controlled substances of one form or another. It's sad to realise that the poor students at Oxford, in the absence of my edifying lecture, will have to just keep taking the illegal drugs. Quotes. So, you know, that was a thing. Now, Crowley in 1930 had printed his lecture, and he generously donated the profits to the Oxford Poetry Society. So I thought, well, this is a wizard wheeze in both senses of the term. I will do the same thing. So I did. I phoned up the lovely Rob Dickens of Psychedelic Press, and I said, Rob, would you like to print a seditious pamphlet? And he said, yes, I would like nothing more than, you know, seditious pamphlet. Sounds great. So so that's what we did. So I wrote a little intro to the thing, outlining the story as I've just told it, with a few more little flourishes in there. A little bit of backstory about Oxford University and the history of people's involvement at Oxford in the anti-prohibition movement, because there is one. And then I included the essay, the lecture, and some of the notes and stuff that I would have given. And I'm donating the profits to the Oxford Psychedelic Society, as my cultural ancestor did 90 years previously. So, you know, everybody wins. And it was funny as well, because the other thing that's really hilarious is that although I'm not an academic, I've been a visiting lecturer at universities. I've taught on an MA course. I sit on a peer-reviewed academic journal. It is admittedly one about psychedelic drugs, but then that's a thing. And I got all these my academic mates like getting in touch, going, "Oh, I'm really sorry. Are you okay? Is this all? Oh, I've been invited to speak. I don't know if I can now." I was going, "Look, man, knock yourself out. I mean, don't hold back on my account, please." And then I suppose the final thing really is that the Wonderlandian logic of not being able to invite somebody who's taken psychedelic drugs to address the Psychedelic Society is itself a rather strange thing, really.
Yeah,
You know.
it really is.
Yeah. So there we go. That's the story of the banned lecture of getting higher, which is the thing that we released. Where was it now? Last month, I think it was. So yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that story.
You're welcome.
What some of the regulars might not be aware of, I've told a story a couple of times on here of an experience I had in a legal country away from here, completely safe and, you know, I've told the story, but they might be interested to hear that the shaman in that story is you.
I haven't heard the story, but I can imagine the story it might be. So
Hmm.
yeah, yes, it might well have been.
It's a great story. It's not a bad story. Don't like think the story about
Yeah.
the parable of the shaman who was an arsehole. It was a wonderful. It was a wonderful story, and you're a hero in it.
Oh, fantastic.
But yeah, this is that man. Mm.
Yeah,
But
I mean, the work there are, as we know, there's loads and loads of different, interesting psychedelic substances. And one of the
mm,
things that I think is really interesting is that to be able to kind of when you work with people and you come together in a small group and you're able to kind of work quite intensely with, I think it was Toad, wasn't it, if memory
it
serves?
was. It was.
It was
It
indeed
was.
5-MeO DMT. Uh, very short acting when smoked, incredibly powerful. Um, you know, interesting substance. I mean, a number of people I know consider it to be one of their favourites.
Mm.
Quite a lot of people that because it's kind of although it can have visual kind of qualities to it, I often experience it as being like it's almost like just a feeling of tripping turned up to 11 for like a very short period of time, and then you're sort of back in the
Mm.
proverbial room. Um, and yeah, I've used that in kind of lots of different ceremonies with people. It's very, very interesting and useful medicine. Like a lot of these
It
things, it's
really is. Well,
increasingly, people are realizing that these drugs, these substances, which were made illegal for all kinds of bizarre reasons, mostly to do with a chap called Richard Nixon, who's not yet another one of the not well regarded American presidents. So his war on drugs is what we're still actually in at the moment, or
right.
rather the war on some people who take some drugs,
Mm.
and psychedelic drugs, despite them being these incredibly beneficial, incredibly useful, and by and large very, very safe substances, unfortunately fell within that part of the storyline, and we are kind of getting to the point where we're um, getting to a stage where we can rekindle the beneficial use of those things, particularly in this kind of background context of there being so much scientific research about MDMA for post-traumatic stress disorder, ayahuasca helping like veterans, DMT being looked at for various kind of psychological illnesses. The uh, work that I was involved with, the study in 2019 was using psilocybin to deal with treatment-resistant depression, and we've
Mm.
now had like the first wave of people going through that program, and the take-home fact is that it's probably the most helpful therapy you can get. That's it, you know.
Right.
Like with MDMA therapy for post-traumatic stress disorder, we've now got longitudinal data, so like 4 years worth, I think it is, of data on this. And of the people in the states who went into the trial using the MDMA, something like 4 years later, something like 67% of those people qualify as having no PTSD at all. And these are all people that went onto the trial with treatment-resistant PTSD. So they'd already tried everything else.
Mm.
And bear in mind, these people have only gone through the trial once because that was the protocol. And there's no reason why, of the people who are still suffering, those people go back through the trial again, through the process again, and they will almost certainly improve. So this is way ahead of any other kind of therapy, of any other way of dealing with this. And of course, it's a whole package. You're getting the MDMA, but it's not like, you just turn up and someone gives you like half a pill and says, good luck, you'll be fine. It's like a whole system of, here's, we're just going to play Paul Oakenfold really loudly for you. And, we'll see how we go. It's that whole process of like, number of sessions of therapeutic talking, blah, blah, blah. Then the session with the MDMA. And the other thing about it that's really important is that people heal themselves. Like it would seem that the psychedelic state gives us access to a healing capacity in our brains, in much the same way
Mm.
that we have healing capacity in our skin. You cut yourself, it bleeds, and it fixes itself. And the psychedelic state seems to provide a similar thing from the point of view of uh, psychological experience. You know, it seems to have this kind of healing capacity like built into it. Um, so yeah, the fact that we're kind of getting back into the process of using these substances and doing that in a good way is, as Terence McKenna would say, not a moment too soon. You
Too
know,
right.
there's
I
a
mean,
there's a lot of healing that we need out there, I would suggest.
too right. I mean, the experience that you very kindly guided me through, because it was the first time I've ever done anything in a ritualized context. It was the first time I've done something where it's actually been. That's not strictly true, but I mean properly ritualized, as in there was a group and there was a guide, and there was a process that we all went through prior to having the experience, and there was an outro as well,
Hmm.
and that experience wiped out my fear of death
Wow.
completely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Completely. I've told the story on here before, so I won't bore the crowd with it again. But because I'll probably tell it again at some point. It's one of my sort of tracks. But um, complete that, just that one time, boom. I mean, it was like, thank you for that, by the way.
Oh, you're
But
well, you're very welcome. And you know, this is really important, right? Because as human beings, and particularly human beings living in a time where, yeah, especially with a pandemic, but we're very kind of atomized, we're very disconnected, we're very kind of thrown back on our own resources, and then we're very conscious, I think, of our own mortality. Most of us are, you know, to some extent. And what happens with humans, and there's a whole psychological field which rejoices in the name of terror management theory, which is about basically how people deal with their mortality. And there's a whole bunch of like really interesting kind of research in that domain. But basically, the take-home facts are that when we are reminded of our mortality, what we tend to do is we tend to take refuge in things that appear to allow us to kind of circumvent the fact of our own death. So people take refuge in things like patriotism or in religious belief or in belief in an afterlife or whatever. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but if we have an experience where we feel the reality of our own death, slightly perhaps counterintuitively, what actually happens is that people don't become more frightened and they don't become more clinging on. It's like people have near-death experiences. By and large, they come out of that with a renewed appreciation for life, a sense of the acknowledgement of the reality of their own death. Perhaps they have a belief in an afterlife. That doesn't seem to really matter, but certainly enhanced empathy and compassion for other people and for themselves. And one of the things that psychedelics definitely can do, and obviously, you know, in the work that we did together, is that they bring us up close and personal with that sense. And that is a really, really important experience for people. You know, I mean, in the ancient world, in the Temple of Eleusis, all of our leaders would have gone through this experience. You know, for 1,000 years at least. You know, since the Bronze Age, the Temple at Eleusis flourished. 3,000 people went through the psychedelic initiation every September, and that would include all sorts of people. You know, it would include slaves. It would be, you know, women could go there, but also all of the lawmakers and the emperor and various other people, and they would go through this experience where they faced their own death and they came out of it with this very changed sense of like who they are, what their self is, and change relationship to this kind of grasping for persistence of their own existence, a kind of an acceptance of that story. And I often say to people, you know, can you imagine Boris Johnson or Donald Trump or any of these people going through an experience where they have to face their own death, the reality of that, whether through a psychedelic or some other process? And people go, ha ha, that's really funny. No, of course they wouldn't. It's like, man, that's what they had to do for like 1,000 years. Northwest, you know, European culture, the ancient world, that's what you had to do. The only, you know, loads of people went through this initiation, loads of people went through this ritual. And when the temple at Eleusis closed in I think it was about 399 AD, the psychedelic experience left European culture. Like it didn't exist anymore. There's no real records of people using psychedelic mushrooms, even though they grow here. There's a few little kind of communities maybe in making use of things like fly agaric and various other mushrooms like this, and some substances. But basically, psychedelic experience, which allows you potentially to face your own death in this controlled way, that went. And then our culture went mental, and it went and predated on the rest of the planet, looking for uppers and downers, things to get you up into the machines in the morning and things to shut you up at night. So it went off to other people's places, and it got tea and tobacco and coffee and sugar and cocaine, and then it had distilled alcohol and opium, which British culture weaponized against the Chinese Empire, So the psychedelic experience, this experience of like going through this initiation, all initiations are basically death and rebirth. It's the same. They're all the same. They have different set dressing, but they're all basically the same. So that initiation stopped happening, and it certainly stopped happening for our leaders. And then our culture started behaving like an addict. And those same addicts as individuals are people who we can give MDMA to, and we can cure their alcoholism. Or we can give, psilocybin to, and we can cure their anxiety and their depression, which they're often masking by a bunch of other addictive behaviors. So that's what happens at an individual level. So I often think that pan back at a cultural level, because we didn't have these experiences, because we didn't have that, it led to, our culture, our ancestors, the people, here we are in the British Isles, what was the seat of the largest empire the world's ever known, which waxed fat on basically ripping up other people's countries for all these kind of materials. I live in a town in North Devon, which was one of the first towns to really become part of the tobacco trade. And it had huge amounts of money. I mean, the tobacco imports is like an exponential curve, So these other substances that we discovered, we took all of those. And when we had the war on drugs, although notionally it was a war against opiates and cocaine, it was actually primarily, in large part, a war against psychedelics. And things like tobacco and alcohol were just, and sugar is such, we don't even consider it a drug. It's so ubiquitous, So yeah, those death experiences really essential for our health as individuals, and probably our health as a community and maybe as a species. I guess. I mean, I don't know. I'm just a bloke from Stevenage. I've got no clue. I have no idea. No, yeah, I don't know.
I love the way you do that as well.
What I think now.
Lay on some truth bombs there. Well, I don't know. I'm a bloke from Stevenage. I love it. Red, we're coming up on the hour. Who's got questions in the comments? Fire them up. Let's open it to the floor. There's a question mark here. Hang on a second. Let's see what that is.
What we got?
Oh, I've got one. A question from Samantha asking, I'm hosting a solstice meditation evening. Could you suggest a simple ceremony that I can add?
Yes, I could. So, Samantha, thank you for that question. I did one recently for. I did a couple of ones recently using a shtick which I'll give to you in case you want to use it or adapt it or change it. So what I do is I get people to light a candle, because this may be a ceremony over Zoom, I don't know, but if people have got a candle, you light a candle, and when you light the candle, you just say some stuff that's true. So you say, as we light this candle, we have to remember that we're lighting this new fire, and that this fire is the fire that came from our ancestors. This is this fire literally is the descendant of all the ancient fires that our ancestors have had since before we were even humans. And we've carried that fire all the way to this moment, and we light the candle. And then you can look up lovely things about candle flames. So, for example, candles every second produce 1.5 million nanoparticles of diamond at the top of their flame. That's a thing. Wikipedia is your friend. Sorry. Yeah. When you've got a candle burning, you've got these tiny little nanoparticles of carbon which are fusing and making these tiny diamonds. So, and then you say, what you also have to remember is that this candle is also this is the fire that we will give to the people to come after us, all of our descendants, all the other humans. and perhaps even beyond the species we are now, might carry this fire. Perhaps we'll carry this fire into space eventually, into stars, into the stars and the other worlds. So you just light the candle and you just think about how this is the fire that's come from your ancestors, and this is the fire that you'll bring to other people. And what I do with the Zoom thing is like get people to put their hands around it to feel the warmth, and feel that that warmth is the same warmth that our ancestors felt and that all of our descendants will feel. And then maybe if there's other people on the Zoom call, they're all feeling the same warmth and you're feeling the same shared human experience. And then you do a similar thing with an orange. So you get an orange, get a lovely easy peel orange. There it is at the bottom of your stocking. You always feel, I always used to feel slightly disappointed. Oh, I've got a bloody orange. What do I want an orange for? I wanted like a big plastic thing with lights on and batteries and stuff. Anyway, but you've got an orange. And you think, well, this is the orange, you know, this like just like the candle, just like the people doing the ceremony. All the material in this orange comes from ancient dead stars that exploded, putting their carbon into putting their atoms into space that have eventually coalesced into this orange that we've got. And we're going to eat this orange, and we can eat the orange together over the Zoom call. We can all smell the same citrus smell, that lovely smell of Christmas time. And then we can peel it and we can all taste the orange, and we can feel that sunlight, because that's what it is. It's captured sunlight in the fruit. And we can eat that, and we can feel the sunlight going into us. And in this dark time of the winter, we can bring that down into our bodies. And that orange will turn into our thoughts and our feelings and our behaviors and our relationships. It will. I mean, this is just a fact. So maybe say something like that, do something like that. Light a candle, eat an orange is basically what I'm saying. And then just put a bit of poetry, the poetry of truth around it, the poetry of authenticity around it, and just do that and feel that shared experience.
I wish I bought a candle and an orange now.
I know. I'm sorry, I've got a candle, but I haven't got an orange. I think I've got one next door somewhere. Anyway, yeah. I hope that helps, Samantha. I hope that's a useful thing.
I'm sure she. I hope she's still here. I'm sure she is. That ability to just make the sort of the lighting of a candle and the eating of an orange into a completely magical experience for a group of people. And that diamond thing has completely just blown my mind as well.
It's true. It's true. Wikipedia is your friend. It's a thing. It was only discovered fairly recently, I think a few years back. But that's again, it's like the attitude that we bring to the thing, like the kids in the gallery. Yeah. So it's the same candle. It's the same orange. By the same token, it's like the difference between making a toast or just cracking open a beer and drinking a beer. You know, it's the same thing, same stuff. It's just about the intention and the attention that you bring to the thing. You know, that I think is the thing that really works for me anyway.
Absolutely. I'm sorry, that's blown my mind, that little guy thing. Can I ask a question?
Yes.
If it's possible to pinpoint it, what was your most profound psychedelic experience? If that's not too personal.
I don't know, because it's so hard to say. I mean, there's a number of the things I can think about. I mean, in a kind of not chemically mediated way, I would say being present at the birth of my two children was an incredible experience. The visceral physical fact of this everyday event, this every second event on our planet, and the truth and the power of that was a staggering event, or two events. So that was a powerful thing. I think also, again, thinking outside of like psychedelics, I did a number of years ago now. I was invited with a group of other magicians, and we did a thing where we did like a chest piercing. So we were all pierced through our skin. I know.
For the man called Horse.
Yeah, but yeah, like that, a bit like that. Yeah. We're all tied to a big yew tree in a yew forest in Sussex for a little while. So that was very powerful for a variety of different reasons. Should anyone wish to read about it, I think it's in one of the books. I can't remember which one now. Anyway, whatever.
Oh, we'll get the plugs in. Don't worry about that.
Yeah. As far as like psychedelics are concerned, I don't know. I mean, one of them, I made the first ever psychedelic experience that I ever had, chemically induced one, was the result of a useful misadventure with LSD. So someone had given me what I thought were 2 tabs of acid, and I had them for like I don't know, man, I kept them in a box for like a year or something, and in the end, there was a perfect weekend. You know, everyone was out of the house, and I thought, oh, I'll have these, brilliant. And I'd read, you know, Aldous Huxley, Heaven and Hell, all these things, and I thought this is very exciting. This is going to be amazing. So I got one of these squares of funny looking paper with a yin yang design on it. It had. I remember that very intently. And so I just got, you know, thoughtful and or cowardly, and I thought I'm going to cut it in half. I'm just going to eat half, and I'll see what happens. So I cut it in half, and I ate it, and then I sort of sat around for about, I don't know, not long enough, like 10 minutes, and then I thought, oh well, it's not working. I'll eat the other half of that one, and then I sat around for about another, I don't know, 5 minutes, and I thought, oh, it's not working. I'll eat the other one. And then I started thinking, oh, I wonder if those little perforations on this thing were something else. And I realized, or it started to dawn on me relatively quickly, that I'd eaten 8 tabs of acid, because the design was only on it was one of those ones where you only get the design if you've got all 4 of them together. And I didn't know how big acid was. I mean, I knew it was chemically, it was very little, but I had no idea. So I'd effectively eaten 2, then I'd eaten another 2, then I'd eaten another 4.
Christ.
And that was quite a thing. That was quite a thing. So it did last for quite a long time. And I was quite pleased actually, because before that I'd already done like maybe 5 years of ritual magic, and then maybe even as long as like 10 years of like meditation and yoga and other sort of stuff. And which is incredibly helpful, because I was kind of, you know, I was in this astonishing world of things going on in my brain. But I kind of felt, because I was used to the magic, altering consciousness, all that sort of stuff, I was able to sort of guide myself through it reasonably successfully. I mean, other incidents unfolded in that, which I won't bore people with now. But yeah, that was quite a profound thing. But also, I suppose on the other side of the equation, it's not just about like how much you take. So I've had experiences where I've had, you know, a relatively low dose of psilocybin and been walking out in the landscape with, you know, a friend who I love, and we've you know, I remember once with one of my friends just coming to this point where we were, you know, walking through some woodland and just coming up to the sea, and just we sort of came out of the trees and we were just looking at the ocean together, and it was just incredibly beautiful, like just, you know, heart-rendingly gorgeous and fantastic. So it's not just about how much you take, it's also about like the context in which you take it. So yeah, there's a few examples. There's more in the literature, should people wish to pay towards my children's education.
Let's talk about that. Where can people, because we're coming up on the hour now, so where can people find you, Julian?
Okay, so the easiest place at the moment is there's a blog that I've been running since 2011, which is called theblogofbaphomet.com, and you'll find me there. There's also a little series. I've got a YouTube channel, so if you do youtube.com/deep magic begins here, and you'll find a little a thing on there called a series called My Magical Thing, which is basically me interviewing lots of magicians. It's only like 5-minute, 10-minute things, very short, sharing their favorite magical objects. But the blog of Baphomet is probably quite a good place. I am slowly moving towards kind of getting a proper, you know, as I think I mentioned, julianvayne.com, I think it's going to be. So that will eventually emerge somewhere in cyberspace. But yeah, the blog is probably the easiest one right now. Oh, yeah, I mean, very nice and lovely people are welcome to kind of find me on Instagram and Facebook. Obs.
Oh, yeah. Fantastic. And the books you can get through Amazon.
You can get them from, yeah, dear. I mean, you know, we must pay for Jeff to go into space somehow. So, yeah, you can get them from Amazon. Getting Higher and things you can, and the band lecture you can order direct from psychedelicpress.co.uk.
Oh, do that one. Do that one.
Yeah. So,
yeah, go through there.
Yeah, so getting Higher, psychedelicpress.co.uk. That's the easiest place to get that. Again, you know, you can do Amazon, or one of these days you might want to go around a bookshop. Who knows?
Yeah, I'm sorry I mentioned Amazon. In fact, I feel quite guilty about that. I was just.
Well, you know, it's a thing, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? That's the way it is at the moment. It's just, you know, but it will change. We'll send Jeff into space, and then we'll just take it over and turn it into a workers' cooperative. It'll be fine.
Truth. Unless anyone's got any last-minute questions to get in quick, and I mean right now, jump in with a question. If not, I want to let Julian go because the hour is late. And this has been lovely, Julian. Thank you so much for this.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me, Danny. It's really appreciated, my friend. It's lovely to see
Really,
you. I hope very soon we can do it in physical space, and that'd be, oh, very
I would
nice.
love that. I would
Yeah,
love
yeah,
that. We're well overdue a cup of tea and a natter and everything else.
yeah,
So
yeah,
there's
yeah, yeah.
lots of more questions coming up. So please show your appreciation for Mr. Julian Vayne with a stream of love hearts up the side of the thing. You hit that love, that love. Julian Vayne, everybody.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you,
Thank you,
thank you,
Danny.
thank you, thank you, thank you. I'll see you soon. Take care, Julian. Thank
All
you.
right, my friend.
Julian Vayne, my
Excellent.
friend.
Loads of love. Mwah.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh, oh, go on. I'm always screwing this bit up, Julian. And there you go. Julian Vayne, everybody. Thank you very much for coming. And what a wonderful night that was. We'll have him. He'll come back. I'm sure he will. Thank you. Thank you to Julian Vayne. That was a really nice one. Very deep and lovely. I hope everyone got something out of it. And yes, Julian Vayne. I'll save this in the Instagram TV so you can watch it later. And I'll put links up for Julian's bits and bobs. And I'll be live streaming some more this week. So stick around for that. And what else can I tell you? There's nothing else to promote. I was going to promote something, but it's not happening now because of tier 3. So I have nothing to promote. So see you on the very next Danny Buckler show, which will probably be over the weekend. Take care, everybody. Loads of love. And I'll see you soon. And one more time, a massive thank you to Mr. Julian Vayne. Thank you, friends. Good night.